Hello, I'm Xiaoling and welcome to What's in the Box, the series where I give a rundown of my impressions of games. In today's episode, we'll be taking a look at The Division for PC. So you might be asking, what is The Division? Well, The Division is a third-person cover-based looter-shooter with some RPG mechanics, developed by Massive Entertainment and published by Ubisoft. So I made a video about my impressions of the closed beta a little while back, and you may remember I didn't really enjoy it that much. It felt kind of flat and it felt kind of boring. So in fact, when the open beta came around, I don't think I played more than an hour of it, to be honest. So you can imagine I was actually surprised to find myself enjoying the full release as much as I have so far. There are of course some issues with the game, which we'll talk about a little bit later, and this video is going to serve as the first part of two. And the reason being is The Division is quite a time sink. I feel I've spent enough time with the game to give you guys an opinion, but at the same time I haven't reached end game yet. So when I do get there and get to grasp with the mechanics and what that's going to involve, I will make the second video. So without further ado, let's get started. So the game takes place in Manhattan, where there's been a massive smallpox outbreak that's killed thousands of people, and basically the entire city is in complete chaos. So you play a sleeper agent who's been activated and is part of the Division, and it's your job to basically help contain the situation and restore order to the city. So there is a story and it's pretty decent. It runs along the lines of you finding how the outbreak occurs, doing some investigations, finding a cure, as well as dealing with some of the factions and gangs that have risen up in the midst of all the chaos. So graphically the game looks good, albeit not quite the image they showed us at E3. I do think that they've done an excellent job. The city's pretty well made, it's believable, you know, with cars and litter and body bags all around. Now, I've never been to Manhattan, but from what people have said, it seems pretty accurate representation. The game has night and day cycles, changing weather, there's snow falling which blows around in the wind, lights glow through the fog and the snow. So it creates a really amazing atmosphere in my opinion. Then there's these contaminated areas that are full of body bags and yellow tape and the like, stray dogs, wandering civilians, and there are gangs as well. Now the footage that you see in the background shows you far more than I could possibly describe, and I will say that all in all I think Massive has done an excellent job with the graphic side of the game. The game looks very good indeed. Character creation unfortunately is very limited. There were very few presets to choose from. I think there were 8, and then you have hairstyles, you have facial hair, and then you have accessories which are basically jewelry. And keeping in mind, once you put shades or glasses or jewelry on, there's no opportunity in the game to remove them. So make sure you're sure about that, because there's no way to change any of these things once you have created your character. But all in all, I was a little bit disappointed. I would have expected more selection, especially in a game that focuses so much on character development. I think being able to customize your character to a much larger extent would have been appreciated here.
We've got a lot of hostiles inside, agents. They're holding Dr. Candle and her staff. We need those personnel back at the base so we can get the medical wing functional.
We'll hold here to cover your back. Then we'll escort the medical personnel when you've retrieved them.
You're dead! This is gonna be fun!
Sound-wise, I think the game did a good job as well, especially the crack of gunfire echoing down the streets as you get into combat, the ambient sounds which really manage to create atmosphere. The voice acting as well, for the most part, would be what you'd expect to find in a game like this, a AAA title. It was relatively high quality and not cringeworthy or anything like that, and some of it was actually quite funny but not entirely out of place in an otherwise serious setting. The music is a mixture of synth and orchestral sounds and worked very well to create a driving atmosphere that pushes you forward in action sequences. Some of it actually reminded me of Deus Ex Human Revolution, those sort of synthy arpeggiated sounds, which is pretty cool. But it's not playing all the time, so it allows for the ambient sounds to create tension in those quieter moments, so I really did like it. So getting onto the gameplay, how does it fare, and how does it compare to the beta? Let's talk about the game mechanics for a moment first though. The Division is a third-person cover-based looter-shooter, but also an RPG. So some have likened it to Destiny, which I've not played since I'm on PC, and others have likened it to Borderlands, and some have even compared it to Diablo. There are 3 primary stats which govern your DPS, your health, and how effective your skills are respectively. These stats increase as you level up and are also affected by what gear you're wearing. So the gear you wear, especially later on in the game, will be customized to what kind of build you're planning on using. Early in the game though, it doesn't make too much of a difference. You also get a variety of skills and skill modifications, talents and perks that you can use, which are associated with 3 separate skill trees: medical, technical and security. Now these 3 trees are connected to your base of operations, which has 3 wings. So throughout the game you'll be doing missions to get resources for each of these trees, which you then use to upgrade the trees and eventually unlock more and more of these skills and talents and perks, which are associated with all 3 wings. And these skill modifications that are unlocked, for all intents and purposes, behave like ruins in Diablo 3. Each modification will change the skill function in a slightly different way, although it'll still be the same skill. And finally, you can change your skills and talents and perks and mods anytime to suit the build that you're trying to make or to complement the team that you're with, which is nice. It encourages experimentation, and I like that a lot. So there is a crafting system in the game as well. You can break down any items you find into parts, which can then be used to build other equipment based on what blueprints you've found. There are vendors in the game which you can sell stuff to or sell stuff to you, but I found it in the beginning especially better to break down everything, since you can just make better stuff than you can buy for the most part, and especially in the early game. Not to mention that the vendors are actually quite pricey and it takes a while to earn in-game currency. With regard to loot drops, they come in a variety of rarities as you would expect in a game like this. There are weapon modifications that enhance your weapons in various ways, and the more rare weapons come with special traits as well, which will enhance different types of builds. And later on you will unlock places where you can essentially re-roll some of the weapon stats and change some of the abilities for a price. The combat is decent. It's a cover-based shooter, so you'll be spending a lot of time in cover, shooting at enemies who are also in cover and trying to flank you. Early in the game, or when you're dealing with easier enemies, it's very easy and not too much thought is needed or tactics. But when you start introducing the harder enemies with armor, or the elite enemies, or if you start doing the harder missions, things change up pretty quickly. Since they can kill you pretty quickly and they seem to try to flank you more, you'll be using more health packs and skills and moving from cover to cover, and it definitely made for a far better experience. However, with the harder enemies comes the other issue: bullet spongy enemies. Now, enemies don't die with headshots in this game. Headshots basically act as crits, so they basically take more damage from headshots than body shots, but they can't be one-shotted that way. And especially when you're teamed up with other people, enemies feel even more spongy. Now, this is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's just something that you should be aware of. And also, because this is an RPG, if you find enemies that are too far your own level, they'll just kill you really, really quickly. Because no matter how accurate you are with your gun, you just won't deal enough damage to kill them. And their guns will do a ton load of damage to you. So enemy-wise, there is some variety, even though all the enemies in the game are humans. We have thugs with pistols and some with grenades, the cleaners with their flamethrowers, and the rickers who have technicians who can put down turrets and have snipers and things like that. But for the most part, so far, there seems to be a decent variety of enemies in the game. So let's talk about the city. The city itself is big and detailed, but feels very empty, almost lifeless. Now yes, I know there's been a smallpox outbreak and everybody's dead, but what I mean is that you're going to be spending a large amount of time running from one location to another without anything happening, nothing at all. You won't encounter any enemies, you maybe see some civilians that maybe you can interact with one of them sometimes. It's just very dead. And because everything is instanced, you won't be seeing any other players either, unless they're in your group, or you're in the dark zone, or you're in one of the safe houses, which are basically social hubs where you can search to team up with other players. Also, not every building can be explored in the game. Chests and boxes are always going to be spawned in the same places and just refill after a certain amount of time. And honestly, it's a real pity, because it seems that they've taken so much time to create even the smallest detail in each corner and room, but not given players any kind of incentive to want to explore all these finely crafted areas, or even wander off the beaten path. So it's a real shame. Otherwise, all the enemy encounters are in the same places. I've yet to come across an enemy group or patrol. Otherwise, all the enemy encounters are in the same places. I've yet to come across an enemy group or patrol somewhere where I've never seen them before. And I had this complaint in the beta as well. So at times it kind of feels like I'm playing Running an Empty City Simulator. I mean, surely they could have added more encounters into the world. It's just so uneventful. I mean, maybe it's just where I am in the game, but come on, I'm level 18 of 30 and I've been playing for 18, 20 hours. I don't think they're suddenly going to change the formula, to be honest. But anyway, the city is divided into zones, each one catering to a specific level range as you would expect in any kind of RPG, each with collectible intel which fills in the backstory, side missions, base missions for the 3 respective wings in your base to get resources to upgrade them, and story missions. And the story missions can all be replayed on harder modes to get more XP and better loot. And the problem is that these side missions are very repetitive as well. It's always find container and defend, or hit X switch and defend, or take X to Y and defend, or kill some bad guys and rescue the hostage. And honestly, I would have liked to see more variety with these missions. The story missions, though, at least, were quite interesting in their progression and kept me interested for the duration. However, the story missions and some of the side missions have boss encounters at the end of them. Unfortunately, there seems to be very little variety with these encounters. The bosses are usually big slow guys and small fast guys, and that's pretty much it. I think I would have liked to see more variety here as well. And with such a big city, there's going to be traveling. So you can travel around the city in 2 ways. 1, running. Now, because of all the running you'll be doing, there's an auto run button. It's your friend. No, correction, it's your best friend. You'll be using it a lot. Or alternatively, you can fast travel to your main base or any of the various safe houses in the game. But unfortunately, this is not quite as fast as I would have liked. Now, I don't have an SSD, and perhaps this is why, but it took a while to load. If you fast travel to the safe house, it'll load you into the safe house, and then you'll exit and be confronted by another loading screen. Not game breaking, but can be frustrating at times. So all the zones in the game are PvE, single player co-op focus, with the exception of the red area in the center, which is the dark zone. The dark zone is a PvP focused area where it's basically free for all. There are AI enemies there as well, which are harder than normal ones, but there are other players there also who can choose to attack you and steal your loot. Now, if you choose to attack another player, you become marked as a rogue agent on the map so others can see you as well and be warned. If you keep doing it, there's going to be a bounty on your head, and basically everyone's going to try and kill you to get the bounty. As I mentioned earlier, the loot acquired in the dark zone is better, but in order to get it, you actually have to take it to an extraction point, and there's a limited amount of it you can carry. You call the chopper and wait for it to arrive, put your container on it, and it gets extracted. Now, all the time while waiting for the chopper, you need to make sure that other players don't rock up and try to kill you to take your stuff, or enemies don't spawn and kill you either. Although in the time that I've spent, almost everyone I've come across in the dark zone is friendly for the most part, and is willing to help you out or res you or team up. So it is a nice addition to the game. I think that the end game is going to be primarily focused on the dark zone. This is going to be the draw of the main game. I'd have to say that the highlight of the game so far, for me at least, is probably the experience in the dark zone. You're in there, you've got the loot that you need, and now you need to get out without getting killed. And it creates a really real, tangible tension that you feel, especially with the fact that any other players can attack you at the same time. And there's always that sort of unease in there, and I really enjoy that. The second thing would probably be the story missions. I think they're pretty good, and they can all be replayed on hard mode, which is something interesting. But the rest of the experience I found a little bit lacking, a little bit bland, in that there just didn't seem to be enough variation. Issues-wise, I didn't actually come across too many issues in the game. I mean, there was only one instant where an enemy was shooting me from behind a door. His hand was sticking out, so I had to kind of aim at his hand every time it poked through. It clipped through the wall. The other thing that I have come across a few times was with the healing skill. You drop sort of an AoE on the ground that heals you. There have been times that just because my camera was not positioned quite correctly, the skill would trigger, it wouldn't heal me, and then went on cooldown. And I came across the same issue when trying to use the little turret that you put down on the ground as well. There were instances where I tried to put it down, but the camera wasn't quite facing the right way, so there was no outline as to where the turret would be. The skill would be used, so it would go on cooldown, but there would be no turret in the game. So hopefully those things get fixed as well. Performance-wise, when running on my SLI setup, I found there were frame drops in certain areas. And when running on a single card with the same settings in the same areas, I got higher frame rates. So there's clearly some kind of issue going on with SLI scaling, and I think if you guys are running SLI, I recommend disabling one of your cards for a smoother experience until Nvidia releases a proper SLI preset profile for this game. But on my single GTX 970 on medium, I was getting between 40 to 60 FPS. I think the performance could be better. It's not awful, but there's definitely room for some improvement. All in all, I suppose my time spent with the game is testament that I'm actually enjoying it. Yes, it can be repetitive and is in fact boring in the long stretches of running from A to B. And yes, there could be much more variety in the encounters and the city could definitely feel less empty. But The Division has surprised me, especially since I didn't like the beta that much. I think it's a decent game. If you enjoy loot-oriented games like Diablo, Destiny, Borderlands, then you're sure to find something you like here. So honestly though, I think I'd actually wait for this on special. And for those of you who'd be willing to pay $60 no matter what anyone says, well, you've probably already bought the game. Anyways, that wraps up my impressions of The Division. I hope you guys found this video helpful. And as I said earlier, I'll be making another video talking about the end game longevity when I get there and what we can expect from it in the future. And as usual, if you have any questions, you can leave them in the section below. Otherwise, I've been Charling. Until next time. And in this episode of What's in the Box, we'll be taking a look at the PC version of Far Cry Primal. For those of you who are wanting to see the options and So what is Firewatch? Well, Firewatch is an indie game developed by Campo Santos Studios, published by Panic Inc. It's a narrative-driven first-person adventure game.